प्लाझो पॅन्ट असते ना त्याच्यात नाही का आपला ड्रेस बनवतो त्या प्लाझो पॅन्टला फाड आहे ना
நல்லா ரெடி பண்ணிட்டேன்.
Hello, Prashant.
Yeah, namaskar, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, namaskar, sir. Can you hear?
Namaskar. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So we still have time, right?
Yes, sir. So it's 8 online, you know. So
Pardon, I could not hear. How much time? We have 30 more minutes, no?
yeah, we have 30 more minutes.
Okay. So are there any participants from abroad also? I could see somebody has
Yes.
written Singapore or something like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, we have. May I request all the participants to mute the microphones, please, and also probably put off your video, please. Yeah.
So Prashant, you have forwarded some questions from the participants. So
Yes, I've filtered them. I've just chosen only the select questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have to start the program at sharp 6:30
Yes, sir.
with as per the agenda and information about Professor Verma. Prashant,
Yes, sir.
well, what you can do when all the panelists will join, you can make them as a co-host.
Yes, sir. I'll do that. Yeah.
And also make me co-host so that something happens, it
Uh,
automatically switches to another person.
yes, sir. In fact, as soon as I introduce those two speakers, I'll just make you host.
No, host, you can be host, there's no issue. You just make us a co-host so that we can unmute ourselves and we can also.
Yeah, yeah,
Huh?
yeah.
One of our panelists, Dr. Gurunjwar, has joined.
Yes, yeah.
You can see him on the screen also. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, Namaskar, Dr. Sunil. My Prash. Yeah.
Uh, uh, Good evening, sir. Hello, Gurunjwar, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. is it on both Google Meet as well? Because I found the link on Google Meet. Then I first tried to open that and then Zoom.
No, Prashant.
Yeah, namaskar. Namaskar, sir. Dr. Sunil. This is Prash.
Hello, Prash. How are you?
Yeah, doing good, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, that actually I sent it. I sent a Google Calendar reminder to all. So maybe you might have been a bit confused. I'm
So
sorry
it's
for
like
that.
that. Joining information. Join
Right.
with Google Meet.
Right, sir.
नहीं प्रशांत गूगल मीट पे भी हो रहा है क्या ये?
नहीं हो रहा है सर, वहाँ नहीं हो रहा है.
Uh-huh.
No, I also got the message that join with Google Meet.
No, but उसमें नीचे login details हैं Zoom में.
Okay.
For me also, sir, it is I have logged in with Google Meet only, sir, first. And there are no one else there. That's why again I log in into the Zoom.
Yeah, I just sent it again. Yeah.
Hi, this is Hemendra.
Hello, how are you? Sir?
Yeah. Hello, Hemendra. Yeah.
Hi, good. I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is Prash. No, good to see you, Hemendra. Thank you so much for your time. So we have Professor Pavan Kulwal here and Professor Goren Tiwar. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Good to meet you all. Thanks very much for the invitation. Look forward
We should
to
thank you. Yeah, we should thank. We'll just wait for Professor Deshpal Verma, and then we'll just get started. Yeah.
Prash,
Yeah.
I think 3 of the participants, they have joined Google Meet as well.
No, I'll just send them another reminder, sir.
Yeah.
I think there's no Google link. In fact, I've removed it. I don't know why.
No, if you refer to your first line of your email, actually.
Yeah.
Prashant. So joining info first line tells that Google Meet also.
And this join Zoom meeting is a bit below actually, and people may join using Google Meet, and if they don't see anybody, then they may read other information actually. So right. I just tried and I found 3 of the participants, they already joined Google Meet.
Right. I'm sorry for that. I just sent an email to everyone. So yeah.
Can it be hosted on both?
No, I don't think at this point of time.
So there will be echo actually. It is possible, but there is echo.
Okay, Prashant, you need to rectify that by sending another mail.
No, I changed it, sir. I sent an email again. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Professor Verma.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm fine. Myself, Pavan.
Yeah, Pavan, yes.
Namaskar, Professor Verma. This is Prash.
Yes, hi.
Yeah, Namaskar. Good to see you here, sir. Thank you so much for making it.
So let's see video. Okay.
Yeah, Namaskar. Yeah, good to see you, Professor Verma. Yeah.
Good. Mm-hmm.
Namaskar. Yeah.
So, how many people you think are online?
I can see from the YouTube there are about 23, and we have got about 187 registrants. So,
Okay.
in fact, a few of them are from Bengal and Jammu and Kashmir. About 9 or 10 of them, they said that they couldn't make it because of Shopian and other stuff that's going on there. So
Yeah,
we have got about 187, but we expect to at
very
least
hard to arrange
we expect to at
introduction
least
to
have
so many
100
people.
over here.
Yes. That's good. So at least we'll have a chance to discuss few things. So how are you, Praj?
Yes, sir. This is, I mean, all well. This is being streamed live. So this is also being streamed live in YouTube. So, so I just wanted to make a very subtle caution that this is being streamed live. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Good. Very good. So we'll start 9 o'clock.
Yes. In another 18 minutes. Yeah.
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 Very good.
So, did you make any recent visit to India, Professor Verma?
Well, it's very difficult to make a visit right now, but as soon as things settle down, I will try.
Okay, I
It's
understand.
a very, very difficult time for everybody.
Right.
So, yes, so this virus has created a havoc all around the world.
Right.
So,
So Professor Verma,
very.
Professor Pavan is my senior from
Oh,
PK Gupta
Pawan is
staff.
the
Yeah,
senior.
and he's a full professor at Mahatma Phule Krishi Vidyalaya. And we also
Good.
have Professor Gorentivar here, Sunil Gorentivar. Probably Professor Pavan would be able to introduce you to him.
Good. So let me give you some update on this coronavirus situation. So there has been rumors around that it is a lab-made virus, which is absolutely wrong.
Right.
This is a recombinant virus between 2 or 3 different viruses from different species.
Right.
And this recombination is very unique. That is, it's not a real genetic recombination because there's no DNA there. It's a RNA virus.
Right.
So it is a intramolecular recombination where the polymerase could jump from one RNA onto the other RNA of the other virus, having the similarity there.
Right.
So therefore, you create a recombinant RNA molecule, and that is the virus basically between the bat virus and pangolin virus. Recombination has occurred, and thereby it has acquired the ability to basically jump the species and eventually found the human as a host.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the story about.
Professor Verma, Hemendra Mathur is also here.
Yes, I see him. Hemendra is there.
Oh.
Sir Verma, good to see you after a long time.
Yes, that's really
How are
nice to see.
you?
Oh, I'm fine. That's just surviving in this COVID world.
I know. Which city are you in, sir?
I'm in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
Yes.
Hope things are
Well,
under
the
control out there.
university, yeah, university is still closed, so
Right,
we're just trying to manage from home.
right.
Uh, but I think university will open, so they are trying.
Okay.
It's a real trying time for everybody.
Yes, it is. It is. I think it's a different world altogether.
Yeah.
Online education has become a norm. So
Yes.
everyone is getting used to it.
Yeah, but it's very hard on students basically
Yes,
because they don't know how to deal with it. It's a,
absolutely. No, no, absolutely hard for everyone, students and
yeah.
I guess even teachers also. I think there is a lot of merit in physical sort of
Yes. Oh,
classroom.
yes. Oh, there's no
No
comparison for.
substitute for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So uh,
And what do you teach this? What are your subjects?
I teach molecular genetics.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm in biotechnology and molecular genetics. So that's sort of basic area. And,
Okay.
yeah, so I have been in this field from the very beginning. Actually,
Right, right, right.
I started this whole field basically.
Absolutely. No, no, absolutely. I think the word secondary agriculture first I heard from you only.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember that.
Well, we did a lot of work for almost 6 years in India. So.
Okay.
Uh,
So, Professor Verma, how you got into the secondary agriculture? Because biotechnologists or geneticists generally ignore to be the different subjects.
well, I want to basically reflect on this, and this is a lesson for all of you to really learn, and that is one doesn't have to be expert in their own area of whatever they study. You have to keep your eyes open around and try to expand beyond what you have learned in your lab or from reading the papers. I became interested in secondary agriculture just by discussing with people because I used to travel quite a bit to India and talking to a number of scientists there. I realized that there is a huge gap which exists everywhere, but in India in particular, the scientists are not in touch with the farmer situation, what the farmer is facing. So I became interested, and Dr. Chopra, who was the member of the Planning Commission in 2006, he asked me to come over and give a lecture there at the Planning Commission. And that time I made a presentation, and Dr. Aluwalia was there, the chairman of the Planning Commission. So he walked in that discussion, and he liked what I was talking about, and he said, "Okay, stop, let's do something." And within 15 minutes, he actually constituted a committee and made me in charge of that. So I began to look at this problem a little bit more seriously, what it is, why India is not taking advantage of science in a real sense. You are growing more food, a lot of varieties have been developed in India, and farmer has basically obtained the so-called raw material to grow, but farmer is not getting the full output out of their work. And I basically digged deeper into it, why it is, because I come from India. I have grown on a farm, so I know the farm conditions in India firsthand. I actually work with these hands in the field, so I know what that life is all about. So having that background, I could quickly see that it is still there the same way. Not much has changed over 70 years time. It is clearly has improved that you have now tractors and other equipment have come, electricity is more prevalent, irrigation has increased, but the farmer is still doing the same thing, growing the same crop, getting the same yield. There is really no real benefit to the farmer from the science. And I began to dig into it deeper and then realized that all countries have gone through this path. US was exactly the same where India is today 150 years ago, where 95% people were farmer. India still has 65% people as farmers. So all Western world has actually have traveled this road, but they quickly adopted, and adopted in the sense that they began to use science into changing the agriculture in a form that it acquires more value. So they begin to process food partly for the necessity because the weather conditions were bad in the winter time here. So they started to preserve, process, make other products from food. And today what you see Western world, it has all gone through secondary agriculture. That is at the root of progress because they learn to process raw material into a finished product, hence acquire value at each stage of the new development that has occurred. And the result is what you see today, that India and the rest of the Western world has literally, hello, yeah. So this led me to really dig into this scientifically, and then I wrote this report for the Planning Commission, which is available on a website. So one can read that report. It's like a PhD thesis because I looked at it from the scientific point of view, not from the political or other business point of view. I looked at it, what can be done, how do you add value to the raw material and then capture that value so the farmer can get more. And that is really not taught anywhere. Even all your agriculture universities are not teaching it. How do you make a 5 rupees egg into a 50,000 rupees egg unless you learn conversion of a 5 rupees egg into 50,000 rupees egg? You are not going to capture the value. How do you convert 1 kilogram of wheat into 10,000 rupees of wheat germ glutenin? How do you make these things? Everybody just goes out in your own labs, you buy all the enzymes, everything. Oh, go buy it from Sigma. So much so that even distilled water for PCR is being bought from US. And I know these things firsthand. So I'm very passionate about what I talk because this is the truth. And I have seen it. I have visited India, north, south, east, west for 2 years, visited hundreds of labs, talked literally over 1,000 people from tribal area to all the way to big business houses and all the major scientists. So I understand where the problem lies and what is the possible solution. So that solution is outlined in this report, uh, which one can dig deeper into and then find a solution for themselves. So this is the opportunity actually for each young scientist or any entrepreneurial person to build upon the knowledge which already exists and therefore applying more knowledge which you can acquire, you can create value. And the value capture is easy now because your uh, Amazon and Flipkart and other vehicles which were not there at that time, they allow to capture the value provided you have something to offer. So applying the basic knowledge that you have, including your bioinformatics, which BioClue is all about, bioinformatics and IT, even that knowledge is not fully being applied. And unless you apply that knowledge to solve a problem, you are not going to create anything new. Simply having a little bit more understanding of how systems work, it really doesn't solve the problem. Yes, for knowledge sake, we understand things deeper and deeper and we get excited how things work, how we discovered new open reading frame in the genome. We get excited about it. Yeah, but that doesn't solve any problem unless we know how things work, what you can do with it. And just to give you example of how much we know, right now, literally hundreds of genomes are fully sequenced and database is freely available. Arabidopsis is completely done in and out practically from each gene is fully tagged. And we have right here in our department, Arabidopsis Resource Center funded by NSF. So we know every in and out and we grow all the mutants of Arabidopsis right in our own building here. Even that knowledge is not fully being transferred to the crop plants. Nobody has taken effort that all these genes that have been studied in Arabidopsis, what are the equivalents of that in wheat, rice, corn, soybean, and what can we do? That has not been done. And that is a challenge to BioClue members that they can take upon these projects which from the practical point of view can be directly addressed and say, can I do this? Unless I comes into the question, problem does not get solved. You always keep on passing to a third person, oh, he didn't do it, she didn't do it, the agency didn't support it, and all that. But you don't need any such thing today. You have a computer in your hand and you have a database available free of cost. It's only the will that is required for you to solve the problem. So there is a lot to talk about, a lot to do. I just want to touch base here with you guys this morning that how you can address these big problems that still persist in India. The farmer income is not increasing, period. 12 years ago when I started this report and worked on it, the farmer income was $1,000 per year average. Today it has become $2,000 per year. In the meantime, the value of the dollar become half. Value of the dollar is now 75 rupees. It was 32 rupees, 33 rupees when I started the report. So the farmer is still at the same place where they were 12 years ago, 15 years ago. And that situation has to change because 65% of the Indian population still live on farm. Directly, indirectly, they depend on agriculture. They don't depend on IT. IT is only fraction of the total GDP, only 200 billion a year. That's all it is. So IT is a very small thing where everybody is praising IT, which is a nice thing to do. There's nothing wrong in that. But
Prashant,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we are on the time, so maybe
Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me, Professor Verma. With your
Yeah.
permission, can we go ahead? Can we
Yeah,
start
sure.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
please.
ahead. Yeah.
I think there are other participants who have joined separately through YouTube because we are getting some messages in our that BioFood group also.
Right, right. So, welcome all to this elite panel discussion. This is Prash, and we are ever grateful to the panelists today, led by Professor Deshpal Verma, who is a distinguished professor in molecular genetics in Ohio State University, USA. We also have Professor S. Gorintivar, who is a distinguished professor at Mahatma Phule Krishi Vidyalaya, Rahuri, and Hemendra Mathur, who was a FICCI task force chairperson, and is currently heading Bharat Fund, Bharat Innovation Fund. And this particular panel discussion is reported by Professor Pavan Kulwal, who is a professor at again at MPKV Rahuri. Um, First of all, I take this opportunity in thanking Professor Deshpal Verma for initiating this. I'll just take about quick 1 minute in telling you how passionate Professor Deshpal Verma is. It was exactly a decade ago, way back in 2010. He invited me all the way to Trivandrum. He held up my flight tickets and everything, and he has seen a kind of so-called a passionate person in me, but I couldn't live up to his expectations. Um, but that kind of curiosity that he drove me allowed me to become a so-called good scientist. I sincerely owe him. And if it is secondary agriculture, there's none other than Professor Deshpal Verma, because I believe that he's the person who has coined this particular word. And in 2008, he was the chairman of Technical Advisory Committee on Secondary Agriculture. That was a part of this planning commission, Government of India. And ever since, he wanted to do something in our country. He has an innate passion to do something for India and for Indian farmers, so as to ensure that some value-driven agricultural products are delivered in India, so that the farmers' income could be raised to at least be doubled once in 2 years. So this is we know from Indian point of view, from IT point of view, what is Moore's law, but this is Professor Deshpal Verma's law, and we are absolutely honored, to have you here, and I'm sure that you will have this discussion enjoyable. To just take a half more minute in introducing Professor Deshpal Verma. Um, he mentors several candidates. In fact, he's so passionate about several things, including programs in human genetics and other stuff. May we request you to please mute your microphone space? Yeah. By default, you're muted. I'm sorry, but I don't know why.
Can you
So,
mute request people to mute on their side?
yeah, please. Yeah. And he mentors several students. He tries to see a spark in them. He ignites them. He calls them, and whatnot. He does everything. And I think the young minds should really take some lessons from Professor Deshpal Verma. We are quite honored to have you, sir. Thank you so much for coming all the way. Um, and we have Hemendra Mathur, who is an engineering graduate from Udaipur, and he went on to become the task force member for FICCI, and then he worked for several sectors in the fields of agriculture, engineering, and other allied areas. And now is heading Bharat Innovation Fund, which is a kind of a venture capital seed funding, which is specifically funding certain gray areas of secondary agriculture and other aspects. And I believe, Hemendra Mathur also closely works with Professor Deshpal Verma. For that, Professor Verma has kindly introduced Hemendra Mathur here. We are highly honored to have you, Hemendra. Thank you so much for joining here today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And we have Professor Goreng Chibar, but I would take honor in asking Professor Pavan Kulwal, who is our reporter here. And I'll just introduce quickly Pavan Kulwal. Pavan is my senior, and I just had a very short stint in Professor P.K. Gupta's lab in Meerut when I just started my career in 2003 after my CCMB in 2002. And Sir was a motive force behind my experiments. He taught me the very basic experiments and everything. He has done an exciting works on crop genetics, especially the marker-resisted breeding approaches. And he has given a kind of a value to his research in such a way that a lot of markers have been developed. And I'm sure that today he's going to take us as a reporter, taking these three eminent panelists today. So over to you, Pavan sir. So may I just request you to introduce Professor Goreng Chibar. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prash. Very good evening to all, and good morning to Professor Verma. So we have another panelist, Dr. Sunil Garontiwar. He is an agriculture engineer with MTech from IIT Kharagpur and PhD from Loughborough University, UK, under Commonwealth Academic Scholarship, followed by postdoctorate from the same university. He has over 35 years of experience in various fields of agriculture engineering, including pressurized irrigation methods, agriculture drainage system, climate smart agriculture, protected cultivation, applications of remote sensing and GIS in agriculture and water management, drone technologies for agriculture, web-based and mobile application in irrigation water management, Internet of Things, sensor-based technologies, and artificial intelligence in agriculture. Uh, uh, since last several years, he has led several big projects in the university, which were funded by external agency. And one of the projects which is now he is now heading is the World Bank funded project through ICR on Center for Advanced Agriculture Science and Technology for Climate Smart Agriculture and Water Management. It is a very big project, almost 20 crore grant, and he's leading that project. He's as part of that project, he's making using a lot of digital technologies and also promoting use of digital marketing and farmer-oriented programs, particularly during the lockdown period. I have witnessed that he has organized several farmer-oriented programs for digital marketing, which can directly be linked to the secondary agriculture, as well as he's member of several committees at the state and national level. So that is in brief about Professor Gorantiwar, and I know that we have three distinguished panelists from three different areas. So I hope that we will have a very good coverage of the topic on secondary agriculture. So with this, we can start the questions to the panelists. So just for information of the participant, I would just like to inform them that during the first three rounds, we have a common question to all the three panelists. Because they being from a different discipline, they can have overview or the broad view on that particular aspect. Then that will be followed by a very specific question to each of the panelists, and then some questions of general origin, as well as some suggested by Professor Verma, and we also have some questions which we got from the participants. So we'll start with the first round of panel discussion. And the question for the first round of discussion is, what are your views about secondary agriculture? So I will start with Professor Verma. I will request him to have his views about secondary agriculture, and maybe we can have 3 minutes each for each panelist so that they can cover the topic. So over to you, Professor Verma.
Thank you. So the secondary agriculture is really in an infancy stage in India. When we talk about processing, food processing, we always look at the word food. What can we eat more and in a different form? So the food processing industry is growing quite significantly in India, but it's always centered around food. However, one has to look at non-food materials coming from agriculture. And non-food sector is actually larger than the food sector. Just to give you a couple of examples, is that soybean and corn, maize produce over 1,000 products, while in India we have maximum 4 or 5 products coming out of corn. Even the waste, the coconut shell, which is completely a waste product in south of India, there are 2,000 products come out from coconut shell as activated carbon. So this list goes on and on. And in my report, you will see that I have looked vertically across the country, horizontally, and looked at crop by crop what one can produce from these crops, both as food and particularly non-food items, because non-food items are non-perishable. Food items are perishable. Therefore, it is very difficult to keep the value that you have created and marketed for a long period of time. But non-food items are being non-perishable. You can store them, transport them, export them, and therefore you get more value out of your raw material that you produce. However, production of non-food items require a lot of knowledge, and knowledge gap is enormous. I'm actually shocked how much knowledge gap is there, because the agriculture scientist and even the normal so-called biotechnologist and chemist and biochemist, they are really not using their knowledge and transferring it all the way to the farmer. And unless you transfer that knowledge all the way to the crop, the farmer cannot understand biochemistry. Farmer can only provide you a raw material. Then you have to hold his or her hands and say, here is the technology, here is the market, and this is what you can do with your raw material that you are producing, or can change the crop pattern. That is, if you are growing one crop, it's not yielding enough per unit land, can you grow something else there and get more value out of it? Some changes are occurring in this direction, particularly in the case of medicinal plant. So a lot of cultivation is going in Himachal Pradesh, out there in South, in terms of cultivating these herbal materials. But that area in which India itself considers a pioneer of Ayurveda, India is actually only a fraction of that whole sector. China is number one in that field. India has not even 10% of China in terms of the herbal medicine, because China is exporting the so-called finished product all the way out to the consumer all over the world. India is making these things. Little bit of cultivation is going on now, but most of it is harvested from wild, processed it, and basically quality controlled practically doesn't exist. And as a result, the finished product is not of the quality that can stand in the international markets. And obviously the marketing is the weakest link, hence you don't capture the full value. So that whole area of medicinal plant, which by the way is a $70 billion per year industry right now. It was about 30, 35 billion when I started looking at it. So it has more than double in that time period as it was anticipated to do, and it has done it. And it's going to go further. It's not the end of it. So India can actually capture still a lot in that area because you have very diverse climate and soil type and variety of plants that grow in India which have medicinal value. So that is clearly a fruitful area. But there are other cash crops that are developing right now, including your hemp, which is a wild plant again in India, but it's becoming a huge industry because cannabinoids are finding very specific use in variety of disease conditions. So more than 20 different cannabinoids have been fractionated from the finished product, each having a different kind of a property and having billions of dollar market as a finished medicine. So that area is expanding very rapidly right now all over the world in Canada, US, and other European countries because they have found that here you have a medicine which um, can be exploited and clearly farmer can grow that crop and scientists can fractionate it and pharma company can package it and market it. So these are some of the areas that one can clearly develop, but ultimately a linkage between the farmer, the producer, who is the producer of the raw material, the processor, the marketing people, and in between the finance of this entire enterprise. These links are extremely weak. They are not strong at all, as Hemant Mathur can further elaborate on it. These are really very, very weak link in India, even though lot of excitement is there, number of small companies are coming up, which is nice to see, but the overall investment remain literally a drop in the ocean. People spend far more on just cut flowers, for example, than putting into this kind of development. So unless the society at large begin to invest in this enterprise and see the value, because it is actually a very developing area, so that one can get excited about that because you can do things. It is in your control. You don't need to take permission. And I was so excited to hear last week. I understand that the President of India has passed this ordinance that farmer is finally free, which was one of my recommendation in the Taxa report. Farmer is made free. That means farmer can produce, can process, can transport, including all the way marketing and export. In between, Modi ji has already done 3 years ago, made mandis digital. So farmer knows where the most value lies of his or her crop. And this was also one of the recommendation in my report. So these two things are really very, very refreshing to hear. And I'm very excited about because these were real bottleneck. A farmer actually could not grind the wheat that they are producing. You needed a license to grind the wheat. Forget about transporting it and selling from north to south. You couldn't do it. So there are so many barriers in that chain which existed for last 70 years, and now farmer being made free, hope that there more activity will start, and it provides opportunity for the young people, for the IT people, particularly the scientists who have knowledge of how things are made. And if you want to know anything, I challenge all of you. If you want to know anything, just let me know. I'll tell you how things are made, because I know how things are made and I can find out things that I don't know. So the technology is not a barrier. What is a barrier is the will, whether you want to do it or not. I can't do it because I don't have the time left ahead of me that I can take a new challenge. So I'm doing what I can do, and you guys need to do much more out there because all your future is at stake. You see. I think I can talk for long, but let's open this for further discussion.
Thank you, Professor Verma, because we have to also look into the time factor. So I now request Professor Gorantiwa to have his opinion on secondary agriculture. And I request all the panelists to be specific about time, because we have so many questions lined up by the participants as well. Sorry for that. Professor Gorantiwa, please.
Yes, thank you, Professor Pawan, for my nice introduction, and also Dr. Prash. In fact, let me tell you first that I haven't studied secondary agriculture systematically, okay? But I have certain views depending on my professional experience in agricultural engineering, okay? And I would like to state those views. Of course, in a process of our discussion, we can expand on those views. Okay? Basically, just to have continuity, I will start with the meaning of secondary agriculture itself. Okay, so we have the esteemed other two panelists. In fact, the recommendation has also been approved by the government of India, and I, in fact, congratulate and thank as well for giving the recommendation of making farmer free to produce, to transport, to process, and to market, because this was the need felt over several years, but somehow this was not being looked after. And once this farmer has been made free, I think now many things are possible, including the secondary agriculture. As all of us know that primary agriculture has been the focus since the beginning, and there were no systematic efforts on the secondary agriculture. Whatever was happening, whatever is being happening now, okay, that is just randomly, actually means not as a result of the systematic effort. Okay? So when we say that the secondary agriculture, this of course means all the practices and processes which add value to the primary agricultural commodities. Because I'm telling this because I have agricultural engineering background, so I'll be more interested in practices and process. Okay, so we have to adopt all the practices and process which add to the primary agricultural commodities by using efficient technologies. That is one word. Second is market information, and third is consumer preference. Okay, so when we say that the efficient technologies, as have been told by Professor Omra, there are host of the efficient technology, and there is nothing that we can't do actually. Market information, that is one important thing, and consumer preference. Now, basically, what I will do now, I will divide secondary agriculture into two components. Okay, one is demand side. Demand side, we always look towards the demand side, because when we say that we have to develop the secondary agriculture, then we'll have to see where we have to develop, how we have to develop. Then it is better that we should go for its components. Demand side is one that includes the consumer demand for value-added goods like ready to eat, ready to serve. Uh, uh, all of us know that India has the largest population of the middle income citizens. Okay, what we say that the middle income group actually, and many countries, they target the middle income group of India, that particular population, and this particular population is nowadays very careful about the quality of the produce. Okay, also they also want to know about, or they also want to consume ready to eat, ready to serve product. Okay, so this is now consumer demands, and for that value addition is necessary. So this is the domestic market, and there could also be the international market for this. And nowadays, not nowadays exactly, since last 10-15 years, this is also being complemented by the growth of organized retail sector, which of course provides the possibility of making the processed food and commodities available to the consumers actually. Okay? So on one side, there is a lot of demand, and on another side, this being also complemented by certain sector. Retail sector is one such actually. And in case of supply side, one may wonder what is the supply side actually. Okay, in case of supply side, again there are two things. We have to always balance the demand of the food grain fruits with the surplus or deficit. You know, India is a country, we have surplus sometime, deficit sometime. If we take the example of say vegetable production in Maharashtra, or for that matter in any other part, say onion, tomato. Many times the farmers, they have to throw tomatoes, they have to throw onions on the street actually. Okay, so that is the surplus period, and many a time deficit actually. The prices rise above 100 kg, 100 rupees per kg. Okay, and many times the government has to impose the certain restrictions, and there is also unrest amongst the farmers actually. Okay? So we have to achieve proper balance amongst the surface in between surplus and in between deficit as well. Now, in case of surplus, we need to go for secondary agriculture to meet the demands during the deficit. So here is the role of secondary agriculture. And in a country like India, I think secondary agriculture will play much role for meeting the gap between surplus and deficit. And another thing from the supply side is that, so when we talk about the value added product and all those things, so then we have to also consider the natural resources which we are consuming for that purpose. Okay? Now, these natural resources such as water, land, and energy, which are required for the agriculture, they are depleting rapidly actually at a pace never we experienced before. Okay, and at the same time, it has now created the demand for efficient utilization of these resources. Okay, so on one side demand is there, but on another side we have to consider the supply as well. Okay, the environmental concerns also compel us to utilize the resources such as chemicals, including fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides more efficiently, and at the same time either use these resources efficiently or opt for the non-conventional, renewable, agro-bioresources type of the resources. As such, I consider secondary agriculture, if properly structured, planned, managed, and operationalized, has the potential of overall economic revolution, bridging the gaps between poorer and richer, and at the same time enhancing the equity in availability of the commodities, financial gains, and quality of life. So as such, secondary agriculture has a lot of opportunities as well. Thank you, Pawan.
Thank you, sir, for your comments about the secondary agriculture. Now I request Mr. Hemendra Mathur to have his opinion about secondary agriculture.
Thank you, Professor Pawan, and it's an absolute pleasure and honor to be on the same panel as Professor Verma, who's always been an inspiration for me for last more than a decade, I guess, since I've been following him, and he's really the one who's really understands Indian farming ecosystem really well, who knows how to kind of take it to the next stage, how to help farmers, how to build a supply chain. So yeah, it's a big pleasure for me to be on this call, and of course with the panelists, Professor Pawan, Professor Sunil, and Prash. On my views on secondary agriculture, I think it's been articulated very well by both the speakers. I just want to add that this whole government target of doubling farmer income, I don't think we can achieve it without a secondary agriculture model. And when I say secondary agriculture, I will say it starts from some bit of primary processing right at the farm gate. And I think Professor Verma was talking about it. You know, even simple grading, sorting, cleaning, and small and primary processing. Let's say converting wheat into atta, polishing dals, right? I think that itself can add as much as 30 to 40% to the raw produce price, right? So this is the money which is typically taken, or this is the share which is typically taken by the supply chain, which can potentially go into farmer's hand. So I think that's one part which is important. And I'm not talking about high capex processing. These are usually very low capex processing. And as we move into the call, I'll give you a couple of examples how some of the agri-tech startups have demonstrated that this is feasible. So that's one. Secondly, giving an option to farmer to sell, where to sell and when to sell. I think this can also be a game changer. And with new reforms coming in, it's a possibility. I've seen farmers who are able to warehouse their produce even for a few months. You know, like for example, chana has come into the market, wheat has come into the market, right? Even if you store these products for a few months, the probability of getting a higher income, even after paying rent and interest cost, you can earn 20 to 30% more, right? So I think that could be another intervention, which is very simple. Third thing is around crop diversification, and Professor Verma talked about medicinal plants, herbal plants. I think there are many such crops which are unexplored. I work with few startups in herbal crops who are dealing in ashwagandha, tulsi, neem, moringa, uh, and and the potential of these crops in terms of adding to farmers' income is huge. The challenge is the supply chain in India is broken. The most of the cultivation is not organized. Even if it is organized, most of the processing is not happening in the country, and that's why you see India share at a fraction of the total market, which as Professor Verma said is about $70 billion, which is huge. And we have maybe thousands of such herbs which are not even explored. So I think that could be another potential area to look at. And there could be other diversification options such as beekeeping. I keep talking about that India is running out of honeybees, and most of the crops, particularly fruit crops, are cross-pollinated. If we don't have enough honeybees, we are going to see reduction in the productivity of most of the orchards that we have in the country. So beekeeping can be a potential option for a lot of micro entrepreneurs and farmers. And we have seen in places like Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan, these bunch of entrepreneurs make bee boxes and they go to the hills and rent it out and earn a decent amount of money, and at the same time benefiting the farmers or the orchard owners who see an improvement in productivity. So I think we need to also look at diversification of income sources for farmer. And this is none of this is a high tech. This is very doable tech, or very affordable tech, if I can call it like that. So I think I think that one of the challenge for low adoption is that we don't have a demand-driven supply chain. Most of the supply chain still remains supply-driven, and that's why if you don't see demand coming in, it's very unlikely farmer is going to invest in any of these new technologies which can potentially help him earn more money, right? He has limited money, he has limited risk-taking capabilities. So I think one positive factor which I see next 5 to 10 years is more and more demand-driven, tech-enabled supply chain. It could be driven by these hundreds of agri-tech startups who are trying to build these models. It could be driven by some large institutional players. It could be driven by modern trade, e-commerce. But I think that could be really a big inflection point in how agriculture is done in India. Just to give you one example before I close and go to the next section. There's a startup called Ninja Card. They procure fruits and vegetables from few thousand farmers and supply to supermarkets in about 7 to 8 cities. They manage the entire operation within from farm to retail in about 12 to 14 hours. They credit farmers' account within 24 hours. There is no intermediary involved, and farmers earn 15 to 20% more. So I think this is one demonstration that if the supply chain is transparent, is demand driven, then there's enough value to be unlocked. And the wastage in the whole supply chain in such model is less than 5%, where the India's average is about 30 to 40% post harvest wastage. So I'm just giving you some examples, and and I'm just talking that all these tech which is coming up, be it digital tech or processing tech or hard tech, is affordable. It's we're not talking of investment of millions of dollars. We're talking investment in few $1,000s, which can change the entire post harvest sort of supply chain models which exist in India. And I'm very hopeful with the push coming from policy reforms. As Professor Verma said, that the farmer is free to sell anywhere, anytime, to anyone. And the interest which is coming from some of the private sector players to early days in investing in these kind of models will hopefully create the kind of scale that we want to see in secondary agriculture. So I'll probably stop here, and of course I'll come back again as we move ahead in the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Hemant Mathur. We have now gone with the secondary agriculture views of all the three panelists. So now I would like to move to the another question. So having known what secondary agriculture is and what is its importance, so still we find in India that it is still not being adopted by maybe due to different reasons. So my question to all the panelists is that what are the main challenges or constraints for secondary agriculture in India? So may I request Professor Verma to have his opinion on about this?
Thank you. So the basic constraint, the way I see it, and it has been elaborated in my report in much detail, is really a developing a system on one hand and eliminating the barriers on the other hand. Now, one of the major barrier that has been eliminated, that farmer can now do things which they were not allowed to do before. And just to reflect on this point, because I'm a person who likes to do things firsthand, I actually try to open a company in India to learn what are the barriers for an ordinary person just to open a company. It took me more than 3 months with the help of somebody to open a company. And then I asked him to apply to the small bank for a alloy processing, because alloy is one of the crop that almost grows widely in Rajasthan area. So this guy whom I was helping, he was from Rajasthan area, and he applied for a 5 crore loan to open a alloy processing. And the very first thing after the application was submitted, the officer asked him to give the advance. And advance was 20%. So 1 crore literally in the name of bribery was asked. Hence, the whole project was dropped right there. So this was first-hand kind of an eye-opening situation, that how the system really worked at that time. Things have changed somewhat in the last 10 years, but the barriers still remain. So there are two kinds of barrier. One is a technological barrier and marketing barrier of the products. But most importantly, for the farmer, is the financial barrier, because farmer really has no cash. They live hand to mouth. So unless somebody can hold hand and say, you grow, I will pick it up, as alluded by Hemendra. So you have to have a model where somebody can grow the material, so you have the raw material available, or you pick up the surplus. Giving you an example of tomato. Tomatoes are sold as cheap as 4 rupees a kilo. They're literally thrown away at certain time because there is nobody to pick them up. Now, same tomato has a value on your table as a ketchup, or if you process it further, you make lycopene from tomato, which has a value of literally 80,000 rupees a kilo. So when it comes to picking up the raw material, processing it, making it a valuable product, the problem comes, there is no consistency in supply chain. The supply chain at large is literally missing in India. And that is why this big international organization finding a window, that because you have a supply chain that is missing, so Walmart can go there and establish a supply chain. Thereby, you have now end-to-end system in place, from the farmer to all the way to packaged goods on the shelf, and shelf being available for consumer to pick it up. So this entire supply chain is extremely weak because the infrastructure is weak. Everybody drops the ball because something is missing. And hence the material, when it gets surplus, it often gets rotten. That's where this post-harvest losses are occurring in India in a very large scale. And they continue to occur. Even today is the same situation. Nothing has changed in the last 15 years. So the point is that a third party has to get involved in building this linkage and thereby get the maximum out of the raw material, so the farmer can get their share and middlemen can get their share and the consumer can get a finished product. So this entire supply chain need to be strengthened, in which whosoever get involved, they need to make sure that their part is robust and sustainable, both financially and operationally. So this is a very, very important aspect of how the product gets from one end to the other. So reaching to the international markets is even harder, and few companies have made some progress in this area. So a lot of finished, particularly the food items, we see now in the Western world, all the way frozen food coming from India. The peas, frozen peas are coming. So the things are like that are happening, but these products represent very small fraction because they are catering to the ethnic community and they are not penetrating to the world at large, where anywhere and everywhere you can go and find a product that's actually coming from India and easily available.
Thank you, Professor Verma. So now may I request Professor Guruntiwar to have his opinion, what he thinks that what are the key challenges for secondary agriculture in India. I think he's okay. May I request Mr. Hemendra Mathur? Okay, Professor Guruntiwar, now he has joined, I think, again.
Okay, sorry. I had muted myself and I didn't realize to unmute actually. Sorry for that. In fact, very well explained by Professor Verma, all the challenges. And In fact, when we discuss anything about the agricultural sector, anything literally, so there are several challenges and constraints, and secondary agriculture is no exception for this. Okay. I will classify that into five actually, though I will classify into five, but I won't take much time. One is procedural actually, procedural barriers, and very well explained by Professor Verma actually. Okay, so this is literally true. In fact, though we say that we have opened up from our socialist era to market-free era now, but still there are many things to be done, and procedural hurdles are really required to be removed actually. Many a time we talk about one window system and all those things, but in practice they don't exist. So there are a lot many things to do in a procedural thing, so that the people they get interest instead of getting fed up with starting anything. And as I already told, secondary agriculture is process and also the products. Okay, so there are many things we have to do, from many associations or FPOs or maybe all those things, and we need to have the friendly procedure. Second is the technological actually. Okay, and here is the role of the scientists, researchers, and all those things. So I give a few examples. One is that the varieties actually. Okay, so we don't have evolved over the years proper processable varieties, and many times those who want to adopt all those varieties, cultivate, they have to pay a lot of royalty to others. And this topic has been talked about several times over the years, but still I don't think we invest a lot of money in that variety aspect, and which I consider very important. In technological, another thing is also the engineering interventions. Okay? When we talk about the secondary agriculture, I think we have to develop from the villages. Okay? It is very essential. Otherwise, we'll be just developing the industries. Okay, but we have to really build the capacity of the farmers to add the value to their product themselves only, and for that, engineering interventions are also necessary. Third barrier is, of course, the financial. Actually, we know that the distress the farmers they have to face. Okay, and many a times 90 or 95% of the farmers they have the finance just to produce something for their livelihood or half of their livelihood. Okay, so financial support, credit support is necessary, and that is also in a systematic way. So this is also one of the barrier. Fourth is the information barrier actually. Okay, so when we talk about this secondary agriculture, then we have to know the behavior of the consumers, what they want, what they like, where they want, and all those things. Okay, and our country really lacks in providing the proper data, proper information. So that is which is very much required for secondary agriculture is really lacking. And last one is, of course, the infrastructure actually. Okay. So as I told, and as the examples of not only tomato, onion, or oranges to be thrown on the streets. Okay, this is really to do with the infrastructure. And when we say that the secondary agriculture, then we need a lot of infrastructure. Actually, it doesn't go without infrastructure. And those infrastructure, maybe I will classify again into two. One is hardware, and another is the software aspect. Hardware, maybe road, transport, post harvest, then cold storage, power, and water supply. Many times we only say that electricity has reached to the villages, but the real situation is that maybe they get electricity only for 3-4 hours. Okay, and even they have energy barely to irrigate their crops. That's all. Okay? That infrastructure, and not only the development of the infrastructure, but the guarantee to the farmers, to the entrepreneuring farmers, that they get all these supplies, water or power, whatever it may be, whenever they want. And another, of course, is the software aspect. In software aspect, we need the uninterrupted supply of all those things, and including information gateway as well, OFC network, internet connectivity, virtual communication, then the system to analyze the data, the system to provide the decision support, and all those things. And maybe this should be, and here also we have much role to play, in the sense that the farmers, they won't do anything. They want the simplistic solutions actually. Okay, and I think this is our responsibility to back the decision support of the farmers by providing them the simplistic situation. And what I specifically wish to point out, that there are several challenges and constraints for the promotion of secondary agriculture, as I briefly pointed out in 5 subheadings. Those can be expanded further as well. But nevertheless, there are opportunities, as many times providing all these hardware and software support, what we mean to say, could become mere extension of what we provide in urban area to the rural areas. So we provide many of these things to urban areas. Okay, so we can extend those to the rural area as per their need. So there are challenges. At the same time, I think we are enough capable to overcome those challenges and convert secondary agriculture into opportunity. Thank you, Pawan.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Mr. Hemendra to have his opinion about what he thinks are the real challenges.
Yeah, I think most of the points are covered, but I would like to highlight a few more points. One is, I think we should understand the farmer profile in India. 85% of the farmer have less than 2 hectares of land, right? And the average is something like 1.08 hectares, and that is also shrinking, right? So the per hectare income for most of the farmers who do 2 crops a year is like something like $1,500 to $2,000, right? And that's the gross income. If you take out the input cost and the financing cost, it becomes even smaller. So we should understand farmer has limited liquidity or savings to invest. So I think that's point number one. Point number two is, again, I will highlight what I said earlier, is the fact that we don't have market visibility or market assurance for the products coming out of secondary agriculture, right? Whatever is being produced, and 95-98% of that is sold in mandis, right? That's what most of the Indian agriculture is all about. If we have to create supply chain for secondary agriculture, we need to create demand for those products. I'll give you a couple of examples as probably potential models which can take it to the next level. So I work with a company called S4S Technologies. I sit on the board of it. This company has developed a solar conduction dryer. It's a team from ICT Mumbai, and it's their in-house product and developed at a low cost. And this dryer does the dehydration at a fraction of a cost without any use of energy, except for the solar energy, and the nutritional value of the produce get preserved. Now, they took these dryers to the villages near Aurangabad, gave it to the farmers, right? Now, why would farmer buy it or rent it, right? So what they did, they said, don't worry, you just take it. We'll make sure that you get enough produce at the at the start of the week for you to process for rest of the week, and we'll ensure that whatever is dehydrated, we'll buy it from. So that's full stack model where you are ensuring it's not just the equipment, but the raw material which need to be processed and the output which comes out of it, that's a market. So farmer is willing to adopt it, and like hundreds and thousands of such dryers which are being given to farmers in that region, and farmer earns as much as about 100 rupees a day for all this work, so which is essentially 3,000 to 4,000 rupees a month. And interestingly, most of the farmers who are doing it, it is the woman in the house who takes care of this operation. What S4S gets in return is a fully traceable good quality product. They do some bit of further processing at a factory in Aurangabad, and then it gets sold to large FMCG companies and condiments and spices companies, right? So it's an end-to-end value chain operation with processing and value addition captured largely at the farmer end. So this is one example where creating demand can drive adoption. And now, of course, once you've done it, I'm sure there are more farmers who will come forward, who are already coming forward for asking for such dryers so that they can also become part of the supply chain. Second example is from another startup. It's called Our Foods. Our Foods. He's an IM alum. His name is Bala Reddy. What he does, he goes to the villages and look for good micro entrepreneurs. He incentivizes them to set up micro processing units like small atta mill, small dal mill, which is typically cost a few lakhs, right? The micro entrepreneur makes some investment so that there's a skin in the game. And what Bala ensures, whatever is balance is needed, he arranged financing for that from the banks. And again, why that entrepreneur is investing in this equipment? Because our foods is saying whatever you process, we'll make sure that it gets sold off. Right? You don't have to figure out where to sell and and sort of worry about finding buyers for the produce. So I think in both these examples, the big learning for me that if you have to drive secondary agriculture at scale, then you need a lot of entrepreneurial energy which can develop these kind of models which are market linked, and that can improve the adoption, that can improve the risk taking ability of farmers, and probably once the model is proven, it can also drive investments from the farming community, at least the village level entrepreneurs which we are seeing in quite a large number now. So I think that to me is the core. Of course, other elements in terms of infrastructure, in terms of data, processable varieties. I think that's another thing we need to be solving for it. We know most of the orange juice that we drink in India, the concentrate is coming from Latin America. So we need to work with farmers to tell them that grow these kind of varieties. But again, someone has to say, okay, you grow this variety and I'll buy it, right? And again, this angle of market linkage comes into play. So I think working closely with farmers, uh, Macon did this brilliantly for potatoes, because when McDonald's came to India, they couldn't find farmers growing potato, which is needed to make French fries, and they tied up with Macon, and Macon worked with thousands of farmers in Gujarat, giving them the right variety so that they get the right type of potato with right starch content and length, etc. And it kind of sort of course, help farmers earn more. So I think there are multiple such examples. I would again say, instead of focusing um, on on the technology, I think there is enough technology available, whether it's processing tech or digital tech or biotech. The question is how to make a sustainable business model out of that is a question. And that's where we should be looking at a value chain approach rather than looking at each component separately. One last point I want to make on this is the dearth of post-harvest financing in India. If you look at the crop output in India, all crops put together is about 200 to $250 billion value at the farm gate. Look at the post-harvest financing market, or uh, post-harvest financing value. The warehouse receipt financing market is just about $5 billion. If you look at value chain financing, it's mostly driven by unorganized sector. So again, we need to build models, or we need to create innovative financing structures where the value chain players, be it the aggregator, be it the processor, or be it the SME who's buying from these aggregators, there has to be a smooth flow of finance at a reasonable price. So we need to build sufficient financing, and also the cost of financing. If you look at the cost of capital for most SMEs in the food processing, it is as much as 14 to 16%. That's a very high number for these companies where the gross margins are typically under 15-20%. So we need to figure out how do we build innovative financing structures which can improve the access of credit and at the same time bring down the cost of capital so that the unit economics improves for these models to scale. So I'll stop here. I think these are 2 or 3 points I wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Mr. Hemendra. So I think now there is very important question which related to secondary agriculture. We often say that, can all the participants please mute themselves? Okay, thank you. So we know that often it is criticized that our education system is such that it is more of theoretical origin rather than practical oriented, and that is what secondary agriculture is also very back. So my question to all the panelists, with Professor Verma, what role education system do you think that they can play in promoting secondary agriculture? So I request all the panelists to be very specific and brief because we have to look into time factor also. Over to you, Professor Verma.
Yes, this is actually very important question because the agriculture system, particularly from education point of view, has been primarily focused on production. And India has done miraculously well in terms of producing new varieties of wheat, corn, and rice. And I think the last variety of rice that I saw, which was given to me when I was there as a first harvest, is almost 2 centimeter long grain of rice, and that is now available on the international market, so we can buy it here under Royal brand. So this is an example of how when they focus on development of new variety, they can indeed achieve that goal because it is within their reach. The infrastructure allows them to achieve the goal. However, on the side of processing, because it's a technology-based enterprise, either the right technology is not available or the equipment is not available or the people themselves do not understand how to really bring about all the steps that are needed to make a product. So that function is literally missing. And I visited a number of small food processing initiative that was done under ICAR. Dr. Petroda was there at that time. So I think these steps or processes need to be strengthened so that people are taught how to process a produce to get the maximum value. Ultimately, you can create any value, but unless you can capture that value, you are not having anything in your hand. So any idea you can apply, anything you can make, but you have to capture the final value. And that value capture is basically has to be different for different things. These 2 excellent examples that Mender gave for solar dryers and microprocessing are excellent examples because here the value is captured, and in capturing the value, the process is strengthened, and in strengthening the process, the initial person who was involved in got benefited. They can't get all the benefit because other people have to share it, but at least the chain is completed, and thereby the process is sustainable. One of the most difficult thing in India, really, which I found, is that everybody look for a handout, and you will be shocked that this report was actually approved by 14 ministries and departments for 10,000 crore initiative. But nobody was a taker. Nobody could own that thing. And I was not there to own it. So I kept on hoping somebody is going to take initiative, because it was not a handout. It was a initiative. Means that you write a proposal and under this plan you will get funded. But nobody wanted to write a proposal because that takes effort. They just wanted a check to be written to them. And couple of people did get benefited under micro industries and some youth training. So a couple of people took advantage of that, but that's all. The whole money was actually died down there. It's a shame, because 10,000 crore at that time had a value of 20,000 crore not today, because rupee has been devaluated. So had this been implemented, and even today, if this report is put on Modi's table, he will grab it in a minute, because this is the roadmap that he's looking for. And I cannot go down there and give it to him. It is one of you people have to take this report and put it on Modi's hand. You will see he will implement it. There are 24 more points there. Only 2 things have been taken care. Each point is very important for the agriculture institutions, for the other controlling agencies, and all the way to the farmer. This was thought through from the practical point of view, and Modi ji is looking for a roadmap to improve the farmer's life. Please do it. And I'm requesting Hemendra in particular, because you have connections there. So please try to put this report on Modi's desk, and you will see it will be implemented. He will do it. If a person like him was there at that time when the report was submitted, everything would have been done by now.
Right. Absolutely, sir. I think it's I think one agenda which all of us should collectively be driving it, and I'm happy
Yes.
to be part in it. I've been making all my representation through multiple government bodies wherever I have some access. I think good thing is that government is listening. They
Yes.
understand the problems. But I think there is a positive mindset, and there's a also sense of urgency to do it. I think we need to build models, we need to create success stories, and we need to demonstrate that yes, this definitely is critical for Indian agriculture. I think that's where we are, and we'll look for guidance for you to how to take this forward. But I can assure you full support in making sure that it reaches to the right people in the government.
Thank you, Professor Verma and Mr. Hemendra. So may I request Professor Guruntiwar to have his opinion about the role of education system in promoting secondary agriculture in India.
Thank you, Professor Pawan. In fact, education system and giving opinion on the education system is always complex. But as far as the secondary agriculture is concerned, we need to reorient our systems totally, actually. Okay? Because I don't say that our education system is not good. It is good, actually. Okay. But our education system is highly oriented towards producing academicians, scientists, and professionals. So that's why when our graduates, they go abroad as well, they fare pretty well. So that is not the issue actually. Okay. But we haven't thought of producing the practitioners and consultant actually. So if we compare to the education system abroad and India, so basically, as Professor Pawan, you told in the beginning that we give a lot of emphasis on the theory portion and not practical. So that is also true. But the problem is that once, say, the people at the top, they are convinced that the theory is given more weightage, not practical. So they will give more weightage to practical and less weightage to theory. Okay. So that is the thing, but that is not the solution, because theory is also important. Okay. So we have to produce scientists, academicians as well, okay, professional as well. But as far as the practitioners and consultant are concerned, we should have some parallel system for this purpose. Okay. So what I meant to say, parallel system, we need to produce the diploma, real sense diploma. Okay, not the downgraded version of the degree actually. So many times what we do, so when we compare the course curricula of degree and diploma, so diploma is a bit downgraded version of degree, that's all. So there is not much difference. Okay. But the diploma should be able to produce the practitioners, consultant, who can do really the things, and not much background, or not spending much time on the theory. So Pawan is well aware of this. As a matter of fact, we have one national agricultural higher education program on climate smart agriculture and water management. So there we are trying to implement this concept actually. Basically, we are starting with the postgraduate diploma in the different sectors of climate smart agriculture and water management. Those includes conservation agriculture, then robotics, drone, geoinformatics, then precision water management, and there are two more specializations actually. Okay. So and we have designed this in a very different way. Okay. So nothing to do with our annual system, semester system, but it is a really different one. We can share the document with all the participants as well, and wherein we have given not much emphasis on the theory, but it doesn't mean that we have ignored the theory. Okay. So we have developed the course curricula in such a way that the industries, government, non-government organization, and entrepreneurs, and our diploma student, they will go hand in hand. So for every tutorials, for every practicals, they will have to collaborate with the industry. For every case study, they will have to produce the result actually, and they need to go to the field industry and do actual hands-on. So there is no only one hands-on kind of the thing over a period of 4 years or over a period of two years actually. Okay, but it is a hands-on for every course actually, and this is the module base. So we have some 4 modules spread over 12 months, and each module has the 3 or 4 courses and 1 project, and each course is of the 3 weeks duration. So that is what we plan, and we are working on this since last 1 year, and we are in the process of finalizing that thing. And of course, while developing that, this particular thing was also in our mind that in future anyway, so though we didn't talk specifically about the secondary agriculture, but the value additions is the beginning till end is very important. So that was in our mind actually. Okay, so let it be the processing system, let it be the input oriented industry. Okay, I think one of the participants, have you finished your talking? Okay.
So I request all the participants to kindly mute their microphone, and Professor Gurujwar, you can continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, and so in that way, our education system currently, though may not support much, but it needs to be reoriented, and we are aware of that, and we are trying to do this. Another thing is that in our education system, as has been pointed out by Professor Verma also in the beginning, that the needs are different actually. It's not, the needs are not unique, and many times what happened, our course curricula is decided, and especially in the agriculture education system at the top, and it percolates down, and we have to adapt as it is, or maybe some 10-20% modification. In fact, the universities need to be free. They should be allowed to develop their own courses in a manner depending on the local needs, depending on the national, regional, international needs. Okay, so then only there will be competition. Nowadays there is no competition because the course curricula is common, just universities they have to implement. So coming back to the secondary agriculture course curricula, so we have to have the involvement of right from the farmers to the industries and other organization, and those that involvement is necessary. And we have developed one PG diploma which takes care of all these factors. And coming back to the report, actually, basically, as I told in the beginning, that I'm not the studied person in the secondary agriculture, but based on the experience I'm telling, so I didn't come across with the report till I received that invitation, actually. Okay. What we wish to do, wish to have the guidance from Professor Verma, how we include the findings of that report in our course curricula as well. So this is also important. Many times the report is there, the report lies on the table, but the findings need to be disseminated. Leave about the dissemination, but the important things the people they have to learn to be applied in actual field, and especially when the secondary agriculture is concerned. Though we are at the final stage, but we'll make sure that we'll include the findings and we'll study that report as well. The last point in the education is that, of course, there are many things to talk. The research we have to perform with the industry. So that is, I think, the need of the day as far as the engineering component of the secondary agriculture is concerned, okay? And which is largely ignored, actually. So in our project, we also started postdoctorate research, which will be combined totally with the industry, actually, right from the statement of the problem till the output, actually, because industry knows the need, farmer knows the need. So many times we do the research as per our need. Okay, and if the industries and all those things are involved, and because we also experience while working with one of the tractor industries, okay, they don't allow us to go out of track, actually. So many times they put us on the track as well, because that is the need. And the industry's involvement is much essential in the education system. That is one thing. So in nutshell, what I would like to tell, that we need to produce the practitioner and consultant as far as the secondary agriculture is concerned, and for that we need to have the diploma course, and at the same time for the development of the technologies we have to conduct the in-depth research, and that should be with the industry. So at least one component with the industry. Thank you very much, Pawan.
Thank you, sir. So now I move to Mr. Hemendra. Can you please focus on this education system as a finance side? And
one को chairman बना रखा होगा session.
Sure. We also have Professor P.K. Gupta, the esteemed teacher. So maybe I will come to him after Mr. Hemendra to have his opinion on education, because he's a great educationist. So good evening, sir.
No, I don't think I would like to say anything. Thanks.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Okay, over to you, Mr. Hemendra.
Sure. Thank you very much. So I think, I want to make 2-3 points here. One is this, I myself is an agricultural engineer. I passed out from Rajasthan Agriculture University in '94. All I can recall, out of the 50-odd subject that I studied in 4 years, there was only one course out of that which was focused on agro-processing. I think all other courses were on mechanization, soil water conservation, irrigation, hydrology, etc. But there was only just one course on agro-processing. And if you go into the food processing industry, it's not a surprise that there are hardly any agricultural engineers in the food processing industries. It's mostly dominated by chemical engineers. So we need to seriously look at the course curriculum of not just agricultural engineering, but any agricultural stream, and make it relevant to what the industry is looking for, right? I think that's point number one. Point number two, I think we also need to look at the curriculum from the perspective of the current trends. For example, artificial intelligence, machine learning in agriculture is a big topic of interest, has a huge application, given the data points which are there in the agriculture, be it weather data, soil data, crop data, water data, and how do you model those data points and come up with a actionable insights is so critical. So of course we have a lot of tech entrepreneurs who are trying to do it, but typically they don't come from agricultural background. So how do you marry agricultural sciences with data sciences is an area of interest to me, and I think it can open up huge amount of opportunities for agricultural graduates if we are able to do it. So I think that's one thing we should be looking at, and I'm sure there could be many other such areas which probably need to be part of the course curriculum which we are missing out. Third point I want to make is the fact that there's a lot of R&D happening in ICAR institutions, in state agriculture universities, but the commercialization of those technologies is still very limited. So we need to figure out a way, how do we build mechanisms or platforms where industry, startups, academicians, scientists, researchers can come together. And it's not about, and so the whatever is being developed should be driven by what what the industry trends are, right? And secondly, I think there are a lot of good scientists we have in the country, but they don't get an opportunity to showcase their research. So we need to work it in both the directions, getting industry to these institutions and getting institutions closer to the industry, so that there is more relevance of the research that we do and there's more commercialization of the research we do. So I think these are 2 or 3 points which I would recommend we should look at to make this industry. I think talent is one big gap. If you look at agri input, agri output, processing, startup, the biggest challenge is right talent. And it's unfortunate we have so many agricultural graduates and they're not able to find the right fit. So there is something wrong out there which we need to correct. And last but not the least, I would also like to make a point that we also need a lot of entrepreneurs at the village level. So village level entrepreneurship could be another area which can be taught, or which can be where the rural youth can be trained using some short-term courses, which could be done at a district level, taluka level, panchayat level. I think rural entrepreneurship to me is a huge exciting area, and in this COVID situation, we have seen a lot of migrant labor which has gone back to villages, and many of them may not return. So I think if we can create good models in villages for these entrepreneurs to earn decent amount of money, so that they need not move out of their ecosystems, is another area we should be thinking about. So I'll stop here, and over to you, Dr. Pawan.
Okay, thank you, sir, for emphasizing the need of new techniques like AI and machine learning applications. That is where the team of Dr. Goruntiwar and is working on use of AI and machine learning in agriculture. So I think our first round is over with common questions to all the panelists. We also have to think about the time frame because we are also exceeding our time limit. So may I request all the panelists to be very brief in the second round. So my question to Professor Verma now is, maybe I can club both the questions because since he chaired one committee on the Technical Advisory Committee on Secondary Agriculture almost a decade ago. So, and there is new committee which is also chaired by Dr. Ashok Dalwai on doubling farmers' income, which has submitted the report to the Government of India. So, sir, do you think that the points which you raised in your report maybe a decade ago, all those points are as such work today, or you want to suggest some changes depending on, because a lot of policy changes have been there, as well as a lot of government changes as we have seen. So, would you like to suggest some new points, or you are still okay with the findings which you made in your earlier report?
Well, whatever is stated in that report is still valid because it was a scientific report not a political report. So everything there is still valid. With the only thing you can add to that is the point that is just made by Hemant is involvement of AI. AI part in agriculture was not there at that time. So, but now it's becoming more and more important both at the farm level. As a matter of fact, I went to an exhibit here where the farm equipments are being built, which are directly linked with the satellite systems for improving the fertilizer input in soil to enhance the overall field productivity. So AI part is clearly going to become more important both in production as well as in processing. So this should become actually a integral part of agriculture education. You cannot really remove that anymore. The second point also was very important, that training of youth at the rural level. So as I mentioned, only one person in Punjab took advantage of the report because he had connections in the planning commission. So he took about 150 crore out of that to develop some youth programs. And I don't know what has happened of that, you see. So, but it is a very important component because the rural youth is getting less and less opportunity competing with the urban youth with respect to the job. And many high school inter or BSc, BSc level students are not finding any employment or meaningful employment. So if that youth can be trained to utilize all what they have learned and channel that in proper marketing, so they can make a bridge between the farmer and consumer. And that is what need to be developed at the rural level, you see. So everything is correct in the report, is still applicable, but I think these 2-3 components, if they can be added to it, it will enhance it further.
Thank you, Professor Verma, for your opinion on that. Now I would like to request Dr. Gorontiwar, since he is an agriculture engineer with specialization in irrigation drainage engineering. So what do you think that the advances in your discipline can play a role in secondary agriculture? Because that is one of the stream where we do not discuss much when we discuss about secondary agriculture.
Okay. So thank you very much, Pawan, and I'm glad that we have another agricultural engineer and who happens to be the esteemed personality, Dr. Mathur from Udaipur. In fact, he highlighted regarding the machine learning and all those things. Okay, and as a matter of our discipline, agricultural engineering, I say in broad. So these are the areas which have the applicability in the secondary agriculture. In the sense that when we say that secondary agriculture, many times it starts from harvesting, sorting, picking, then processing, packaging, marketing, and then reaching the product to the consumer. Okay? But I think so that is important component, but it starts right from the production process. I mean to say, when we sow the seed, or before that, it is not only that particular portion after harvest. Okay, so that is important. Okay, but we have to see since the beginning. Okay, for example, if we want to produce any agriculture commodity of right quality, including taste, flavor, color, and size, actually. Okay, so for that, we have to go for the precision agricultural techniques. Okay, so when we say that the precision agricultural techniques means it is the precision application of the inputs all kind of the inputs, I mean to say. Okay, and these inputs should be such that we should be able to produce the right quality of the agricultural commodity or which the consumer wants. Okay, and for that we have to do a lot of things on the background actually. Okay, and the range of the techniques that are necessary, those involves right from the geoinformatics, okay, then artificial intelligence, including machine learning, okay, and also the application of many other things actually, including hyperspectrometry, drone technology, robotics technology, and all those things. So there are a host of the things for which the agricultural engineer can in fact play a role. Okay, while doing that, one thing we have to keep in mind that when we develop the technologies, those should also be the farmers friendly. Okay, it is not like that we develop some complex technology, and here is also the role of agricultural engineer. You also mentioned about the irrigation. I would like to give an example. This precision irrigation is very important. It is not only from the perspective of producing the right quality of the produce, but at the same time for saving of the water. Several experimentations and research studies have been undertaken in different universities in different parts of India. Okay, but still the farmers were not aware of giving how much quantity of the water they should give and when to give and all those things, and there was really need of certain tools. Okay, so for that we developed certain applications wherein farmers, they are now able to apply the water as per the climatic needs of the crop growth stage, and at the same time what is the system requirement side and all those things. So in that application we involve the simulation modeling, and based on which farmer can take the decision in real time actually. Okay, so whether the farmer should give irrigation today or not, whether farmer can prolong the irrigation, if the irrigation is prolonged, how much loss farmer can incur, and so many things actually. But basically, as a first task, we provided the farmer tool with by which farmer can apply the precise amount of the water depending on the climate, that is weather needs, crop growth stage, soil, and what is the irrigation system actually. And farmers, they are now adopting. So we have popularized this as fully irrigation scheduler. Okay, but besides that tool, okay, there are host of the technologies, techniques, and simulation modeling, and all those things. So and this is just one actually. Okay, the second comes to the IoT based now. Okay, this is also very important, and we also started working on the IoT based tools for irrigation and pest disease management, for which Pawan is also one of our member of the group. So that we have started, and there is also the role of what we say the agricultural engineer. There are many things to discuss this, because this is very vast topic. But I would like to conclude with one thing. Whenever we say that the secondary agriculture, we have to think about the industrialization of the villages actually. Village industrialization is very important. And for that, we have to develop the entrepreneurship such that they can go at the village level or the cluster of the village level. Okay, and then they can assist the farmers, or farmers themselves can become entrepreneurs. Okay, so that village industrialization is very important, and for that definitely we have to have the many things which I narrated in the beginning, infrastructure and all those things. Some of the things they are really coming as well. So when we say that the custom hiring, so we are also developing certain mobile applications for custom hiring. Okay, so all those things are very important. And last thing is that we also introduced the concept of digital village and climate smart village. Okay, of course, this is not leading towards the village industrialization, but maybe the first step which others can extend. So we are in a process of developing the methodology for develop the villages as the climate smart and digital, wherein farmer can adopt the host of the technology for precise inputs, precise application of the inputs, which will definitely lead towards the quality of the produce. Thank you very much, Pawan.
Thank you, sir. So now I request Mr. Hemendra, because it is often everybody knows that secondary agriculture is very important from the economic point of view for the GDP and all those things. But still, it is seen that agriculture sector is neglected in terms of funding for innovative ideas, particularly when we compare it with many other sectors, industrial sectors. So, what is your opinion about this?
Absolutely. I think this has been one of the challenges. Just to give you some numbers, if you look at the investments in agri-tech space over 5 years, which is 2014, is about $550 million. And that's not even a 1 or 2% of the total venture capital money which come into India. Most of it goes into consumer tech, fintech, etc. So it's a very small number. There are two good news. One, the number is changing for good. Last year alone, we received something like $280 million into a lot of agri-tech startups, which is a good sign. Secondly, I would say also the fact that the investor base is expanding and diversifying. Now, we don't just have impact funds or agri-tech funds, but we also have many mainstream funds, foundation, developmental financial institutions who are investing in the sector. So I think that's the good news. And if you look at the COVID time for last 3 months, there are 6 or 7 deals in agri-tech which got closed. There are another 3 to 4 which is going to get closed soon. So despite difficult time for most startups, agri-tech continue to attract capital, which is a good sign. I think investors have realized that this is an important sector, and there's a lot of defensibility. You know, consumer can cut on discretionary expenditure, but when it comes to food, that is the last item consumers will cut on. So there's a huge amount of defensibility and resilience in the sector, which I hope will attract more capital into the sector. And second, I would say what is triggered this flow of capital, though quite late, is the fact we have some high quality entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. There are about 500 plus agri-tech entrepreneurs who have demonstrated some proof of concepts and now in the process of scaling those solutions. So my hope and optimism about the sector is entirely because of the quality of entrepreneurship I see coming into the sector is a big plus. And I personally believe that this is one sector which can even absorb 10,000 agri-tech startups. And I won't be surprised if we see that kind of number in next 10 years, because there is room for everyone. It's a $400 billion market as of today. And there is no way India can become a $5 trillion economy without food economy becoming at least $1 trillion, right? So if our economy has to move from $400 billion to $1 trillion, that is an additional $600 billion, which can happen in 5 years, 7 years. I'm not talking about that. The fact that if we have to move the needle to $1 trillion economy, we need investments, right? For $600 billion additional consumption or additional demand, we need at least $100 billion worth of investments, right, in the supply chain. And my guess is at least 1/10 of that, 10% of that should go into new age innovations, be it digital tech, biotech, food tech. So if we put that number at $10 billion, if we spread it over next 10 years, we need at least $1 billion per year of investments which can go into new age technologies, which are coming up. That number is about $150 million per year on an average for last 5 years. So we need to improve that significantly. Last but not the least, I think the role of ecosystem is critical, be it incubators, be it investors, be it corporates who work with startups, be it policymakers. And when I say policymakers, I would like to include both central government and the state government, because state government plays a very important role in driving adoption of some of these technologies. I think all of us have to come together to make sure that these solutions scale. The biggest challenge for any innovation to reach out to farmer is that the farming is fragmented, right? We have 600,000 villages, we have 150 million farmers. It's unfair to expect from a startup to right. So how do we create public platforms? How do we create digital platforms? How do we create public ecosystem which can make the first mile and the last mile access to farmers much more easy and efficient for all this innovation to reach out to them? So I think these are a very sort of overarching ideas I want to share. Of course, I can go on and on, but I'm cognizant of time. So I'll stop here and hand it over to you, Dr. Pawan.
Thank you, Mr. Hemant, for your remarks or your opinion about the funding in agriculture sector. So let me ask Professor Verma. Sir, you suggested one thing very specifically in your report to deregulate the agriculture industry. And now, last week, Government of India has taken a good initiative to by announcing one nation, one market. So, what is your take on that? What is your opinion about this?
I think this is the most exciting thing which I have heard in last 10 years, and I'm extremely elated with that simple one step somebody realized and took that step, which is going to undoubtedly make a significant difference in this sector. So having that done, now the challenge is to the youth of India, basically, particularly at the rural area, and that youth cannot work themselves. That youth is an appendage of the people that are in urban area or who have certain finances with them, to utilize that youth and build those markets. And exactly those two things that Haminder mentioned, like the solar driven dryer and microprocessing, that is very, very good example how things can be done. And there are literally dozens of more examples out there in my report, because I went through this whole thing from one end to another, as if money is unlimited and you are given a challenge to do something. What would you do? So money is not important. Remember, money is a byproduct. People in India put money first. Money should be put last, because it is the people and idea. And if there is a right person, then right idea can move forward with that person. No amount can push a bad person with tons of money behind that person. Nothing will happen in the end. So look for people, support them, and then hope that right idea can be implemented. So the surprising thing, and which is really not surprising, before if you look last 20 years or so, the share of agriculture in the GDP is continue to decline. It has gone below 15% right now. It was 30% about 25 years ago. So the share, because GDP is growing, so the agriculture GDP should also grow. However, the share of agriculture in total GDP of India is continue to decline, because the farmer is not getting their share in that growing economy. This is a fact. And this can only be changed by empowering farmer to get more value out of what they produce, including the non-food materials. Now, for this to happen, the investments in ag bioprocessing has to increase from the government side, both in private sector as well as government input into bioprocessing has to increase significantly, not just twofold, threefold. It has to go more like tenfold. And that investment, which part of which will go into infrastructure and part in the education, would make a difference and is actually needed. Without that, not much will happen. And even if you put that money into agriculture, the agriculture has to, agriculture education, the education has to change. And as mentioned by Sunil, this has to become more formalized. So developing programs or degree or diploma programs around bioprocessing or secondary agricultural processing has to become more formalized. Hence, agriculture institutions need to take this as a priority so that students can be oriented properly, thereby learning an interdisciplinary approach. And this interdisciplinary approach is practically non-existent in all Indian institutions because everything is compartmentalized. If you are in this program, you can only take these courses. If you are in that program, you can take these courses. All those barriers have to be removed. I just gave a course myself last semester on plant biochemistry. And I was amazed to see that in that plant biochemistry course, there were students from engineering, there were students from medicine, and there were students from ecology area. None of them has anything directly to do with plant biochemistry. And yet these students took that course, enjoyed it, and they indeed learn it because these are fundamentals and fundamentals never get wasted. So this kind of approach that like farmer is made free, student need to be made free at the institution level. Students should be able to take any course they want as long as they pay for the tuition for that course. And this constraint has compartmentalized Indian education system so much that interdisciplinary approach basically non-existent. Hence, you are always looking for help from a third party because you are not fully competent enough to take an idea all the way. So these are some of my thoughts in this direction that if these changes can take place, it will make a huge difference to really open the door for the, because remember, the today's youth is much more demanding, much more ambitious than our time. So things are changing, and unless you allows that generation to move forward, they will become frustrated and the problems will breed in the society. So the future is good, it's open, the opportunities are global now, they are no longer local opportunity. You can make anything in one corner of India and can flood the whole market around the world if you are willing to do so and have the capability and have the right product to that world can use. So those doors are not closed, those doors are completely open. Hence, you can achieve your dream if you have the desire. The desire comes from within, desire never comes from outside. So you need to desire and you need to deliver. the world is out there ready to accept that.
Thank you, sir. So maybe we have to finish the things in short span of time because we are getting late. So may I request both the panelists to be very brief in their response. So my question to Professor Guruntiwar is, what is your take on the digital platforms? Because we are very instrumental in using those platforms to reach to the farmers, particularly imparting training to digital media during lockdown period. So maybe in this brief you can put your points.
Yes, thank you, Pawan. But before that, I would like to take 1 minute on what Professor Verma said regarding the education system. Sir, you are very right, and our education system is too rigid, actually. There is no flexibility component. And the day by day, we are becoming more rigid. I will just give an example. We have different degree names in different universities. And by chance, if that degree name doesn't appear in the list of ICR or university, the student is not given admission. Okay, even though the student is from IIT. So one such example is that IIT offered the degree in water resource development or water resource engineering and management. And say we offer in ICR system irrigation and drainage engineering. Okay, so these IIT students may not be given the permission in our degree program. Our system is such a rigid, and it is really necessity to get rid of that rigid system. Then coming back to the digital marketing, of course, I think that secondary agriculture cannot go without the digital marketing. Okay, so all of us by now know what is digital marketing. The farmer's producer can sell his her farm produce from its farm with or without processing, actually, by using some of the advanced marketing tool or local marketing digital platform such as Facebook Marketplace, with geotagging or Telegram groups. In fact, we had during the lockdown period 2 trainings of 1 week each, and having 10 sessions of 2 hours, so 20 hours each, one for exclusively for the farmers and one exclusively for the practitioner, actually. And we received great response, and based on that we formulated one 3-week course as well for the digital marketing. And digital marketing has a lot of future as well. Okay, because when the farmers they have to take his or her produce to the consumer. Okay, and the best way is to network through the digital marketing platform. And of course, there are many things to talk on that, but because of time limit, I think I will just emphasize that digital marketing is the key component of secondary agriculture, and we have to train the people in digital marketing, maybe by involving some certificate courses. We have already included a certificate course on digital marketing in our course curricula. Of course, this is financed by National Agriculture Higher Education Program. Under that program, we have one particular full course in our PG diploma as well, and we are also conducting the training program on digital marketing. And let me tell you that we conducted 1 week digital marketing training program for the farmers, actually, 1 month ago, and we received such a good feedback that the farmers, they have started adopting those digital platform. Of course, these are the farmers around Pune area, but nevertheless the feedback is very good. Thank you, Pawan.
Thank you, sir. So now I move to Hemendra Mathur. Maybe the last question to the panelists. Sir, we have seen a lot of migration during this COVID period. So maybe for a majority of these people, those who migrated, agriculture was the primary profession, but because that is not lucrative, they migrated to bigger cities. So now because of that lockdown, they have to go back to their villages. So do you think that secondary agriculture can narrow down the that rural-urban divide and to some extent also solve the labor migration issue on long term?
Yeah, I'm totally with you on this point. In fact, even before COVID, I've been advocating that we need to create meaningful employment and entrepreneurial opportunity for rural youth. I think this need has magnified 10 times after this migration which has happened in the recent past. And you know, I personally believe that if you have to add value through secondary agriculture, lot of activities have to happen near farm, be it micro cold storage, be it a micro warehouse, be it a micro processing, be it aggregation of farm produce, be it sorting, grading, packing, cleaning. I think all this should happen near the farm. Right now, it is these activities are dispersed on the throughout the entire supply chain. So if that has to happen in villages, I think there's a huge potential for all these migrant laborers or and other rural youth to get engaged in these kind of activities. So I always say if the entrepreneurs in Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi have to succeed, they should, in agriculture, they should learn a way to work with village level entrepreneurs in Coimbatore, in Baranbaki, in Khammam, right? I think that is so critical. You know, for me, going from Delhi and telling farmers that this is a very good device for pest detection, he is not going to because device may be good, but because he doesn't know me, the level of trust is not there. But if a local person in the village tells him that, look, this device is going to work, we know about it, we know the test reports, we can validate, farmer is going to adopt it. So for any innovation to reach to farmers, we need that layer, a local village level layer. It could be an entrepreneur, it could be a rural youth, it could be an NGO, it could be an FPO. Like FPO is something we didn't discuss in the call, but that is another important segment which is coming up. And if that uh, ecosystem start developing, it will throw many entrepreneurial opportunity for rural youth, right? Because for FPU to succeed, you need quality inputs, you need a lot of activities around market linkages, you need a lot of efforts on digitization. You create entire ecosystem around building governance structure, on accounting structures, etc. So I think we need to capture this opportunity. We need to convert this challenge of migrant labor, which has come up in last 60, 80 days, to an opportunity. You know, whatever he was earning in places like big cities like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Mumbai, Chennai, even if he earns, let's say, two-thirds of that in villages, he'll be much better off because his disposable income will even increase. You know, here most of his earning is going in paying rent, in commuting, etc. So my guess is if we can create opportunities for rural youth and migrant laborers to earn, let's say something like 20, 25,000, 30,000 rupees a month, I think that can be fantastic. You know, that can probably hold them back in the village they belong to. And I think there's a huge potential to generate those kind of opportunities. But for that to happen, it's not the government schemes, it's not the subsidies, it's not the incentives, government incentives, which is going to work. You need to build sustainable entrepreneurial business models, right? And I have given you some example to you on today's call, how to multiply with that those successes by few thousands, few millions will ultimately solve the problem that we face in agriculture, and particularly the the challenge that we have on hand in terms of absorbing the migrant labor who has moved back to village. So yeah, I would say there's an opportunity. We should grab it with both hands, and we, as an ecosystem, we should try and help them through policy initiatives, through whatever ecosystem that we can create uh, to train them, to sort of guide them on new techniques which are useful for farmers, so that you know they can earn a living out of it. So that's my prescription, and I'm happy to work with all of you guys if you see such potential opportunities to work in rural areas. I'm happy to bring the agri-tech ecosystem. I work with hundreds of these entrepreneurs. I'm happy to bring them to whatever village you see there's an opportunity, so that it's a win-win situation. for them as well as people on the ground.
Thank you, sir.
I think this is an excellent idea. This really need to be followed further. My suggestion is that Hamendra and I should put a formal document together and try to see if your new planning commission, Niti, what do you call that? Niti Aayog?
Niti Aayog.
Yeah. So maybe they will look at this thing at a national level. And since the under the taxa report, some youth training money was already provided. So there's a precedent for this kind of a support coming from the center. So I think this is a great idea and it's a need of time. And you have both the takers as well as the people who will see this opportunity to build this micro entrepreneurship, which was, that is what Gandhiji wanted, Gramin Udyog Badhao. Nobody cared for that. And this is the opportunity to really get the youth engaged into the rural entrepreneurship and thereby applying the technology, right technology to bridge the gap between the rural and urban domain. So this is a great idea and I would be very happy to help Hemendra to push this thing further. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to work with you to put a
Thank
paper.
you, sir. Since we know that time is running out, and before we have a final 1 minute concluding remark from each of the panelists, there is one question for Prashant. So, what can be the role of bioclues in promoting secondary agriculture? So, maybe he would like to, because that question was put up by Professor Verma. So, maybe Prashant would like to answer that question. Then we will move to all the panelists for their concluding remarks. Prashant, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, the forget syndrome. Yeah, thank you so much, Pavan. In fact, I think we are not going to have false promises this time. I think we are going to come up with a full-time commitment, Professor Verma. Maybe when probably when we met last time, probably some 10 years ago, I was a pretty young fellow, with just passed out PhD degree in my hand. We were all young folks at that time. Pritesh, who is the co-founder, and who are the other co-members. We have greatly evolved in the last 10 years, I would say. But we have made some inroads in those particular directions. We were in touch with National Agricultural Research Management, which is a agricultural research center based in Hyderabad. They also have got a base with ICAR in Delhi. And we thought that we would start up with a kind of a taxa report based course, which is going to be an online course for all PhD fellows, wherein 1 year program would be, 1 week program would be dedicated online. And the next 1 week, they would go into their neighboring villages, talk with the farmers, and try to dispose of their duties, what they have learned during their 1 week curriculum, and then come up again, what are those kind of problems that probably the villagers and the farmers are really facing, and then they can probably come up with plausible directions. So the good thing here is these are all the researchers who are absolutely mentees from BioClues, wherein they are absolutely mentored by various agricultural research scientists. There are eminent mentors in BioClues. We've got about strong team of about 4,500 members. But when it comes to Seva, or when it comes to big listening skills, unfortunately, as we all discuss, not many people turn up. Many people keep a lot of expectations. For example, today many students didn't turn up because they're not given certificates for this panel discussion. So that's really unfortunate. So we need to really change our mindset. We need to come up out of our thinking box, and probably come more successfully in this direction. And I'm sure Professor Pavan would definitely join me in this particular endeavor, and together we will come with a detailed plan during the next couple of weeks to you, Professor Verma. And I'm sure we are going to do this, and I'm absolutely confident that with wonderful inputs from you, Hemendra and Professor Gorentivar, and we also have a WhatsApp group called AgriPods group, where there are distinguished scientists. So we'll definitely come up with this, and we are not going to disappoint you this time for sure. This is for sure. I mean, probably if we are not doing anything now during our 40s, probably we'll not be able to do it during the next probably 20 or 30 years. So I think we have 2 weeks time. Today is June 8th. So by June 22nd, we are coming with a detailed plan, and I'm sure that we are going to have many more such what do you call webinars and panel discussions to go for. Thank you so much, Professor Verma. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. I know that this topic is very huge and it cannot be covered in just 2 hours. There are several things which we have missed, like mention of FPO, MSME, and several other things. But there are certain limitations when we have panel discussion. So maybe before we conclude, can I have very brief concluding remarks from each of the panelists? 30 seconds. So Professor Verma, please.
Well, I think we have covered a vast area in our discussion, but I really put this back to the audience, and that is, put up what you want, put up a question. This is what I want to do with my education, period. Education purpose is not just to eat the bread. There is much more to education. And ask that question to yourself: what do you want out of the education you have obtained to do things in your life? And then answer will come. So you need to be in charge and drive. So you are in a driver's seat of your vehicle. Where do you want to take it to? Just don't be happy to eat bread and samosa there. You need to have much more in life, a purpose. A purpose-driven life gives you much, much more happiness. So build a purpose, the means will be found, and you will succeed. That's all I can convey.
Thank you, sir. So may I request Dr. Guruntiwar sir to have his concluding remarks?
Pawan, do I really need to give the concluding remarks after Professor Verma sum up so
Missed
nicely?
30 seconds, so anything if you
But
think
still,
it has been missed.
Yeah, but still I will say that we have to promote the secondary agriculture, all aspects and components of the secondary agriculture. That is one thing. And second thing is that we have several missions, out of which is doubling farm income. And secondary agriculture will certainly contribute to that. And at the same time, we need a lot of policy reforms for implementing the secondary agriculture successfully. And I hope that all these policy reforms, they are well documented in the report of Professor Verma, actually. So we need not to speak at length on that. But one thing I would like to add, that we need to go for the village industrialization. Then we should have consistent export-import policy. We should provide the credit support, and there should be true liberalization or one-window system. And in addition to what we discussed and what maybe what is in the report, and I think many of the things, they are probably outlined in Atmanirbhar Bharat Yojana of Honorable Prime Minister as well. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, sir. So maybe Professor Hemendra, can you please have your concluding views?
Yeah, so I think, of course, it's been very inspirational words, both from Professor Verma and Professor Sunil. All I want to say is probably for the students, agricultural students who are on the call, I'm assuming there are a few out there. I just want to say two things to them. I think a lot of agricultural graduates end up in non-agricultural job after they graduate, which I feel very bad about, because you've been educated in a stream, and it could be the fact that you don't get a good opportunity. I totally understand that, but my request to all of you is try and make a career in this space. This is a space which will bring many more opportunities than any other sector in a country like India. I have no doubt in my mind that 2020 to 2030 is one of the golden periods for this sector, and we need much more talent. We need many more youth. We need a lot of young minds like all of you to drive it, and we are all there to support you, but you are the driver. So that's point number one. Point number two, I want to say, don't have a employee mindset when you graduate. It's okay if you want to do a job to repay your loans, and that's absolutely fine. But do try your hands at entrepreneurship, and there is no age for it. Immediately after your degree, or want to do 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that's absolutely fine. But don't spend your lifetime being an employee. That's all I want to say. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, agriculture is again one of those sectors which is offering already a lot of opportunities. So build an entrepreneurial mindset. Be an employer, not an employee. So that's my message to all the young minds, all the agriculture graduates who are on the call. And all I can say, we can do it together. We have such nice words coming from Professor Verma. I think those are very inspirational, and we just if we just follow them, we have a great future ahead. So with those thoughts, thank you very much. Thanks to all the organizers and panelists and everyone who's on the call. I know we are beyond our scheduled time, but you guys are on the call, so thanks very much for being patient.
Thank you, Mr. Hemendra, for your concluding remarks. So I know that topic is huge, but we have to stop somewhere. And maybe in the next 2 weeks, with the help of Prashant, we may come up with some of the minutes of the panel discussion, which will be circulated to all of you. And maybe you can elaborate if you think something is missing. So with this, let me thank Professor Verma profusely on behalf of BioFluid, because he's very instrumental since last over a decade to have a really policy on secondary agriculture. And I think this type of panel discussions will really give some new insights into the policymaker, to the policies which we need to have for the future of secondary agriculture. So thank you very much, sir, for sparing your time. And I know that you are very busy, but still you could make it, you could find time to circulate 2-page bulletin for the benefit of the participant. And we hope that your inputs, your guidance will be there always with BioFluid and all the panelists also. I would also like to thank Professor Sunil Gorantiwar. I know he's very busy because he's having so many projects, and all the time he's busy with several things. But still, he could accept our invitation to become one of the panelists and to offer his very useful remarks. So thank you very much, sir, for your time. And I would also like to thank Mr. Hemendra Mathur for sparing his time. I know time is very important for people like him when he's sitting so many committees, and he offered so many useful suggestions. And that is what the beauty of our panel discussion was, that we have 3 panelists from 3 different areas who could put all their points together. So so that we can have very good concrete suggestions coming out of this panel discussion. So thank you very much, sir, again. And lastly, I would also like to thank Prashant. Although my topic is altogether different, but he insisted me to have some panel discussion and to join this as a moderator as well as a rapporteur. And I would also like to thank one of our research associates who is assisting me in this panel discussion, Prashant Kaya. So thank you very much. And with this, I would like to request Prashant to close the meeting and panel discussion. Over to you, Prashant.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. I think on behalf of BioClues and all the scientific community, I would like to once again thank each one of you. It's been absolutely wonderful. You're all from different time zones, especially Professor Verma. It's been so kind of you, sir. It's all because of you. And thank you so much, Hemendra, and thank you so much, Professor Gurentivar. And not to forget, Professor Pavan. He has been absolutely amazing. In fact, I loved all the kind of questions that he framed, and more to that, they gel very well with Professor Verma's visions. In fact, Professor Verma also made scintillating questions here, and I'm sure that days to come, you're going to answer them, very effectively. And I'm here, standing over here, and I would request all the participants who are listening to stand up and give a standing ovation to all the panelists over here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant.
Thank you so much, Professor Pavan, Prashant, and our esteemed panelist, Professor Verma and Dr. Mathur. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Kind of you. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.